Hey friends, today we have a guest on the podcast, and I want you to know that I happened to listen to an episode of her podcast, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. This perspective. She's a life coach as well, Christian life coach, and we do the same thing. But some of the things she shared, she just shared it in a different way. And I was like, that's so good. So this episode, we're talking a lot about dopamine and deep fakes, the fake dopamine. And it's really, really good. So a little bit about Joy. She's, again, a Christian life coach committed to helping women deepen their relationships with God and realize their full potential. She hosts the podcast, The Journey to Becoming. It's globally ranked. She guides listeners through personal development, thriving relationships, and spiritual growth. She's on a mission to empower women to overcome being overwhelmed, fear, and self-doubt by embracing their God-given purpose. Her authentic and relatable approach has fostered a vibrant online community, inspiring countless women to embark on their own journeys of becoming all that God created them to be. You guys, this conversation, it's so good, and I can't wait for you to listen to it. So you ready, girls? Let's go. Hey there, I'm Melissa Batt, the host of Priorities on Purpose, a podcast for overwhelmed women who are tired of going through the motions. You know there has to be more to this life than a cycle of numbing out, scrolling social media, exhausting yourself with a never-ending to-do list, and still feeling like a failure at the end of the day. You have hope that tomorrow will be different, and I'm here to help you make sure that it actually is. I'm a Christian life coach, and on this podcast, we talk all about intentional living, mental health struggles, and tangible ways to be the best versions of ourselves with Jesus at the center. I promise to be your hype girl and biggest cheerleader as I share simple strategies to help you get out of your rut, eliminate distractions, and live the life you are created for. Are you ready to go beyond existing and learn how to truly live? Put your earbuds in and let's get to it, friend. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Melissa.
Yes. So I want to tell our listeners, okay, so I found Joy's podcast. What's the name of your podcast again? The
Journey to Becoming.
The Journey to Becoming.
Mm-hmm.
And Joy and I are both you're a life coach, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we're both life coaches in the Christian space. We definitely have a heart for Jesus. And I was listening to her podcast. And so we talk a lot about the same things, but her perspective and the way she worded something, I was like, oh, you have to come on my podcast and tell everyone about this, because I know sometimes y'all get tired of me telling you about this. And so I'm like, we need a new perspective. And so Joy, welcome. I'm excited for you to be here. We're going to be talking about unhealthy habits and the dopamine hits that come. And so I'm just going to give it to you, get on your soapbox, because I have a feeling this is one of your soapbox moments as well. And so let's start with how you came, because my listeners probably aren't going to be familiar with you yet. How did you get to this point of recognizing that the dopamine seeking behavior was unhealthy? Mm-hmm. You want to start there? I don't know. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, let's start there. I think, oh my gosh, when did this transpire? I think as a woman of God, right? As a woman of God, we have this tension in God, I want more of you. God, I want what you have for me. And whether it is through an encouragement at church or even listening to a podcast, there are some moments in our life that they motivate us and they encourage us, right? And how many of you know that motivation and discipline is not the same? Right? Motivation and discipline is not the same. And a lot of the times we look to the beginning of the year, we look to a fresh start as okay, this is the motivation that I need. And then time goes by and you're like, wow, I lost some motivation. And you realize it's not the motivation that it's going to carry you. It's the discipline. And I think I've looked at myself in my life, like I'm a pretty disciplined person in, I was an athlete growing up, and of course I'm an entrepreneur and all of these things. But there was a turning point in my life where there was a lot of unseen. Like we can put a lot of discipline and a lot of focus on discipline and motivation in the seen things, right? In the physical. But when it's the unseen, and what I mean by that is how you're feeling inside, your thoughts, your emotions, your reactions. And when you don't take the time to address the unseen, they come out in different areas. And I remember probably around like 2020, I'm like, I am so sick and tired of being sick and tired. Have you ever thought that to yourself? Like,
oh my gosh.
And how many times, like I used to say all that, I just need to get out of my own way. I know what to do. I just need to do it. It's like, what does that even mean? Like, I'm laughing because I've been there before. And for me, it was the tension of, I know that there's more for me. And at the same time, like, I know that I need to shed past versions, or I need to shed things that are weighing me down, because if I'm going to have endurance to run the race that God has set before me, stay in my lane, something has to change. Something has to change. And going back to like, again, these unseen things, like I believe that God does his best work in, or like behind the scenes, in the unseen. And it is so hard. I think this is, the tension is, but I see everybody doing, or I see everybody posting, I see everybody's quote unquote success or what is going right. I see everybody's highlight reel. We're inundated with everybody's highlight reel of their lives. And it gets to a point where we become more consumed by what someone else is doing in their life than by what we are doing.
Yeah.
Right? Oh my gosh, this person did this. And we look at it like, oh, maybe this is motivating me, but really it's just keeping us stuck and like digging our heels even like deeper into the areas that we're stuck in. And so until you're able to be like, raise your hand, kind of shaky, like, that's me, I want to make a change. Like something isn't sitting, like I'm not producing the fruit that I know that I'm supposed to be producing. Like if we can get really honest, like there's so much more that God wants to do within me, but it has to start with me acknowledging those things.
Yeah.
So
okay. So take a minute. So when you first started talking, when you mentioned the unseen, I thought you were talking about faith.
Oh, no.
But you're talking about like the junk.
Oh, the junk. Oh, the unseen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like the stuff that's in us that's messy and not pretty and like the junk. Okay. So at first I thought you were talking about unseen as in like faith stuff. Oh, so I just want to clarify in case anyone else was got lost for a minute, that you're meaning the junk in this, of like the stuff in ourselves that isn't pretty, that it's, we don't put out there for the world. The
stuff that we don't even want to acknowledge.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's the stuff I love talking about, because I'm like, let's get into that, because it's below the surface.
It's so below the surface. And like, okay, so let me clarify. When I'm talking about the unseen, I'm talking about the unhealthy emotional patterns that you have in your life. I'm talking about the constant hurriedness to always have something to do, like the busyness. Some of us are living for the busyness. Some of us are living for the perfectionist mindset. Some of us are living for, I got to keep up with the Joneses. Some of us are living for the scroll. Some of us are living for these really like these fake things in our lives, these deep fakes. And that's what I kind of had referred to in the podcast that Melissa had heard, was there are some deep fakes in our lives that we have to come to acknowledging them and be like, this is not serving me. Sometimes I'm talking about like, I have to, the deep fake or the unseen things of, I'm escaping my life on the weekends because I secretly don't like who I've become.
Yeah. Or, and this is where I know for myself personally, like I chase success in work because I loved who I was to those I was working with, because that instant gratification that came from when they were like, oh my gosh, you're so awesome, that helped me. I wasn't getting that from parenting. I wasn't getting that as a wife, and so like I used work as an escape. I mean, I've used everything as an escape in my life. I've used work, I've used volunteering, I've used social media. I mean, you name it, I used it to escape because I didn't want to face the real reality of what was going on. So I'm glad we like kind of went back a second to make sure everyone was on the same page. Okay, keep going.
Yeah. And there's a difference, like what you're saying, like, it's not that it's not work. Like, there's a difference between hard work and then heart work. That's what I like to call it, heart work. And the unseen is the heart work.
Yeah.
Right? The unseen is, I need to work on these areas that I'm insecure in, that I'm going to social media to fulfill, or these areas that I compare myself in, that I'm doom scrolling, these areas that I don't see my worth in anything other than the number on the scale or how I look physically. And so I'm going to the diet culture. I don't see my worth. And so I'm going to binge eating. I don't see my worth. And so I'm going to watching hours upon hours of television. Like, those are things. And like, if we can get in, like, if I can transition into like the fake levels of dopamine. So dopamine it's a feel-good hormone. It's a neurotransmitter. It's something that is done when you do something, it releases something in your brain. And so there are some deep fake things that we do, and all of us do it. I think sometimes it's like, I don't want to admit it because I don't know if everybody struggles with this stuff. Yeah. Everybody. Okay. And so when we can be exposed to these things and we're like, oh, this is causing me to feel good for an instant, and even like overspending, right? The consumer mindset that we have is out of control in this day and age. It is out of control. Add to cart, Amazon. And I'm not knocking influencers, but do you even know how much money you've spent because you've been influenced? And that's almost even a term like, oh, I was influenced and I bought this, right? Yeah. Do you use it? How did it make you feel? Did you go and you scrolled on that page and you're like, I wish I had her life. I wish I could just post about outfits all day and have the perfect life. She doesn't. She doesn't have the perfect life.
Yeah.
She doesn't have the perfect car, job, family, dog, husband, right? And it gets us to get stuck. But for a moment, we're like, but if I could just buy what she's wearing, if I could just get how she organized, then maybe I can get a level of peace that I don't have right now. Yeah. So the fake levels of dopamine are in our overspending, our overeating. They're in our perfectionist mindset. They are in scrolling. They are in comparing. Like, they're in so many different things that make us feel good for a second. Now, because we are in such a culture that is so surrounded by those things, it almost feels like boring to take a step back and be like, what are the natural things that are natural ways to get dopamine? Going out in nature, being with God, meditating, eating a good meal that nourishes you, having a face-to-face conversation with somebody, right? Like, these things, because we've over glamorized everything else, it almost is boring. And I want to liken it almost to diet culture again, because, artificial sweeteners.
Yeah.
Right. And they're like 1,000 times sweeter than a regular strawberry, right? Than the natural sugar. So you need a fraction of an artificial sweetener, like, compared to natural sugar, right? That's why we are addicted to sugar as well. And so if you were to eat a piece of fruit and then to have like a piece of, they have these like sugar-free candies now, but it's artificial. So it's like super sweet, right? Have you ever had something? I've heard it said this way, like, our taste buds are so depressed when we have had the processed food, when we've had the artificial thing. If our taste buds, like, if we can think of our taste buds becoming depressed, how much more, right? The more we go to these fake levels or these fake things for a fake dopamine hit, how much more does it feel like this is journaling? What's that going to do?
Right.
Being out in nature, I'd rather sit in the house and scroll, right?
Yeah.
Going on a walk, having my quality time with a loved one and looking at them face to face. Is that going to do something, or should I just post a picture of us having fun? Wait, let's take a picture. The phone eats first, right? And it's like these things, it's like we don't want to even acknowledge that these are things that take place in our head or our mind or our thoughts. We don't. And once we can acknowledge them, we can kind of like detox from the phone, detox from the scroll, detox from the comparison. I don't know how many women that I talk to and that I, get to speak life into and coach. They're like, I feel so free because I put my phone on do not disturb. And I went to the beach and had time with Jesus. I went on a solo date and I felt so if you're feeling freedom when you're apart from your phone, what does your phone create?
Yeah.
What are you bound to when you pick up that phone?
Yeah.
If you feel levels of freedom doing something else, right?
Yeah. It's so hard though. I remember one of the things that became a real problem for me. So I've struggled with mental health issues probably my whole life, but I didn't know about it until child number 2. And there was an incident that happened 2019 and I moved. I was just really struggling. I just moved to a new place. Like everything, like it was just hard. It was a hard season. And in that, man, reality TV was the coping mechanism that I used. And I remember like, I don't even know what the message was at church, but I know what I heard. And what I heard was, you need to give up the Real Housewives. I love Real Housewives of Orange County, Beverly Hills. Those were the 2 that I actually watched. Mm-hmm. And like, God was like, you got to give up reality TV because, it wasn't that I wanted to be them, but it allowed me to escape from my own life, my own issues. And also like that comparison, I always say like, it goes both ways, right? Sometimes it makes us feel less than, and other times it makes us feel better than. And for me, I was like, well, at least my life ain't that bad. And, like, I don't have that much drama in my life, and so I used it as like, made me feel a little bit better that my life wasn't as crazy and chaotic as, like fighting at a restaurant and, all that stuff. And so, but God was like, you've got to stop. Like, this is not serving you. And it's not helping you get to where I'm taking you. And so from that moment, like I was like, okay, like once God told me I can't go back, so I was like, okay, we're done. No more Real Housewives. Big Brother is the only American Idol sometimes, like, and I feel like they're a little different because it's just a short season and then it's done. And so, and it's not all the drama. Some Big Brother seasons I've had to say no to, but it's more family oriented instead of me laying in my bed watching it, because I wouldn't watch it with my kids in the room. I wouldn't watch it. Like my husband would be like, what are you watching? That is like pure chaos,
My daughter would come into the room. She's like, Mom's watching Drama Girls. And she was little. And I was like, oh, shoot. And so, yeah, I would watch it by myself too. Total guilty pleasure. And then she was like, Drama Girls, Mom, Drama Girls. And I'm like, okay, we're done. We're not doing this anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So anything I could do to escape. But again, it was not helping me. And I love that you talk about like the unseen. I call it acknowledging the elephants, like all the things that you don't want to talk about, but is there. But again, I think part of the problem is we have been escaping for so long that we don't even recognize these things because we have filled our mind and been so busy filling ourselves with noise that we don't even recognize the work that God would want to do in us because we're just constantly numb.
Yes. And I think when you are so distracted, I think in the book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, I think that there's even a quote in there, and it's talking about how we're so, man, I wish I had it in front of me. I know it's somewhere here, but he's talking about you're so distracted by your distractions, like basically you don't even know.
Yeah.
And your spiritual health is dying and you don't even know it.
Yeah.
Like, and that's supposed to be the opposite, right? We're supposed to die to our flesh. And if somebody's listening, like I was also back in 2020, like I didn't even know, right? I didn't even know. I remember I had a friend who she's like, hey, I want to pray over you and your husband. And we were at the house. And I'm like, cool. Yes. You hear from God. Absolutely. Like she's you have those friends that are like prayer warriors.
Yeah.
They text you that they've been praying for you. You're like, yes. Right. And she's like, hey, I want to pray, hold hands. And so she's praying over us. And she said something along the lines of slowing down. And I'm pretty sure I rolled my eyes. During that prayer. And I did not receive it for myself. I was team no sleep. I was team I want to do everything. I want to be acknowledged for everything. I was team I will wear every single hat. I will be at everything. I will be everything to everyone. And it was so also like the mental weight inside of my head. You know what I mean? It wasn't necessarily like, it was what I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
It was what I wanted. And I was dying slowly. My spiritual life, right? My spirit like was not connected to God in that way. It wasn't. Yeah. And you don't realize it till you take a step back and you're like, oh my, I'm so sorry. Like, and that's when he began to peel back the layers, but I had to be ready and willing. And I remember I was crying in my shower one day, like, I don't like this feeling, because a lot of the times when we hide from ourselves, our unhealthy habits will come up physically. Like, have you ever been woken up in the middle of the night because you've been tossing and turning, thinking about like a situation where you feel stuck in, or you've been like replaying a conversation in your head, or you're maybe coming to a crossroads where you're like, I need to step out of this environment, or I need to have this conversation. I need to confront this. I want more for my life, but I don't know how to do it. But you've like, you're not just reflecting, you're ruminating on it. And it's like, it becomes like kind of a comfort. Like, I'm stuck. Yeah, I'm so stuck. Man, I want more, but I'm just so stuck. Right. And these narratives, they come into your mind. And even for a moment, like my body broke out in this rash, and it was due to my stress that I didn't even want to acknowledge. Like, that's how bad it got, honestly. And some of us are just like, this is another thing. Like, we're so busy. We're like, give me another coffee. Like caffeine, the caffeine addiction is so real too. Like, I can't wait to procrastinate. So give me some more coffee. You know what I mean? Like, and it's different for everyone. Everybody has different convictions. And so maybe you don't struggle with caffeine. I don't know. You don't know until you detox from it. You don't know when you don't have it. You're like, I don't even remember. How did I get to this point where I was so reliant on the scroll? How I was so reliant on caffeine, how I was so reliant on these things. I think in that book too, it talks about like, we pick up our phone, like the average person picks their phone up like, I don't know, 700 times a day, something wild.
Yeah.
And you'll think like, that's not me. That's not me.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if you're willing, or I should say, are you willing to do whatever it takes for as long as it takes to become that best version of you, to become that version of you that God has placed inside you before you were even born?
Yeah.
That Jeremiah 1:5 version, that person is in there. The Holy Spirit is in you, and he wants to come upon you. You are his workmanship. You are his masterpiece. He has already prepared things for you to accomplish long ago. Will you take responsibility for your life,
Yeah.
Or will you just continue to sit back on your hands and come up with excuse after excuse? It's been this way forever. How could I ever get out of this? This is who I am. This is who I am. Are you settling for who you are today? Or do you want to press on and break through to that woman of value, break through to that woman who's becoming all that God has created her to be? But it starts with you having to be aware and even acknowledge it.
Yeah. Yeah. I know one thing that I have said for a long time. Well, first of all, I had facial swelling. That's how it showed up for me. And I had to recognize, like, I had self-worth issues. I treated my body like a machine, diet culture, all the things. Like, God had to like peel back like all kinds of things and get that off of me for me to realize, like, now it's about nurturing this body that God has given me, to treat it well, to live out the call that God has given me. It's not about losing weight. It's about being healthy, to walk the walk and be able to do it well. I talk a lot about circling the wagon, which is kind of one of the words that God gave me, of like getting your things in order so that the enemy has less, like, everything's not exposed. So like in your health, looking at like where, if the enemy, like, we don't have to make it easy for him, like our finances and our marriage, we don't have to make it easy for him. Like, let's have a strong relationship with our children, when we're like, I don't know that I've shared this on the podcast in a really long time, but there was an incident that happened because I was overworking, because I was on my phone all the time, because I was so checked out. There was an incident that happened that I almost missed. However, I had just started paying attention and being very mindful. And because of that, I caught it in time before it really wreaked havoc. And my fear is, like, how many people, like, you're missing it. You're missing the things that's right in front of you. I had a child that was struggling with anxiety and depression. I didn't even know, because I was so like, he didn't look like, on the outside, he didn't look like it, like, good athlete, had a girlfriend, popular kid. Like, he just looked like he had it all together. But really, he was so struggling. Like, that's another incident. Like, there's so many different things that we don't even recognize because we are so busy, like, avoiding all of the things. And again, that heart work is so necessary. And I remember, like, one of the books that I read, which Elimination of Hurry is like one of my favorite books. I tell like that's been on my like top 10 books that every Christian should read. That's one of them. Another one, I don't know. Have you read Jesus Over Everything by Lisa Whittle?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So a lot of what you said, where you were like, talked about the shopping and like, oh, we choose this over, you said over a lot. And it reminded me of that book, Jesus Over Everything, because she kind of talks about that. Well, she does. Like, that's all it's about. And that's when I realized I had a shopping problem. And instead of dealing with the anxiety, instead of dealing with the stress of like what's really going on, being where my feet are in the moment and recognizing like whatever the feelings were, the emotions that were coming up that I needed to deal with and talk to God about, I would just be on my phone. Like, and sometimes I would even be like, but I mean, if I don't actually purchase it, I only add to cart, but I don't actually submit the order, it's harmless. But it's still, no, it still was harming me because it was just putting off the work that needed to be done to get to where I needed to go.
Yeah.
And I like, we have to face it at some point if we're ever going to get through it. Until then, we're just constantly avoiding the thing that's right there in our face.
And the reason why we avoid it is because it's the unseen, because nobody knows what we struggle with behind this face, behind the smile, behind, the put together outfit or the whatever it looks like. Like, in order to be authentically you have to, integrity starts with you. Who are you when others are not around?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's uncomfortable. Like nobody wants to like, yay, I'm so excited to deal with my emotions and deal with like why, like why I feel like this and I'm so anxious in this situation. Like I don't like, yes, it's it seems so much easier to avoid it, but it doesn't like, we got to get to the root to pull the root out.
You have to get to the root because you have to allow the soil of your heart to be tilled, to be tended to you, because out of the heart flows the issues of life.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to allow God to cut on you.
So tell me more about this dopamine, like some of the, like, let's talk about the dopamine thing again, because I don't know that I've ever talked about dopamine hits, which by the way, do you know that there's a thing now where they call dopamine dressing?
No.
Dopamine outfits.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I have seen that. I have.
And I'm like, okay. So tell me more about this.
So I actually just did my most recent episode on dopamine. I was talking about creating a dopamine menu, because in order for like dopamine is not bad per se. It's when we are attracted to the fake or the negative things, right? Like I mean, I'm not trying to get like super heavy, but this is like also how like addictions start, right? You have that quick fix. And so creating a dopamine menu is being able to say like, what are things that I broke it up into like 3 different areas, like quick, short ones. What can you do in 5 to 10 minutes, right? You're feeling overwhelmed. You're feeling like, and these are things that you would go to instead of picking up your phone. Instead of picking up your phone, because you're like picking up your phone to check a message and then you're on for 35 minutes and you're wasting time. Like if there's somebody on here that's listening right now that is like, I don't want to waste my time anymore. Creating a dopamine menu, I don't want to be distracted anymore. You've acknowledged those things. This is going to help you. So something that's going to take you 5 to 10 minutes. Get a journal. I've heard this popular phrase too now. It's called junk journaling, kind of like scrapbooking, but in a journal. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
So that's like making a comeback. Like get a journal that you can write your thoughts down, that you can write your visions, your dreams, that you can write a quick prayer down. Is that really going to make a difference? Well, you won't know unless you try.
I tell every coaching client, and this is big for me, because if we are not getting our thoughts out, mm-hmm. we basically become constipated in the brain. And so there has to be output because we're putting so much in it. And so, whether it is, I have one coaching client who really struggles with putting it on paper. So she'll do like voice memoing. Yes. And so she'll just voice memo all of the stuff to get it out. And then she can re-listen to it and, go from there. I do like prayer journaling, like it's just a letter to God, like every day. That's kind of what I've done for a really long time, but it's unedited. I don't edit myself, and on hard days, it really is so simple. It's just today sucks. I don't know. Like I'm having a bad brain day. I'm really struggling. Help me, and sometimes it's a combination of my feelings and to-do list. Like just getting it out of my brain, it helps so much. But again, when I was looking at your podcast in the episode that you're talking about, you talk about instant gratification and delayed gratification. Instant gratification is definitely something that I have struggled with. I don't do a lot with the Enneagram, but I do know that they say I'm a 7, and I say the Enneagram, like some people think it's terrible and you shouldn't follow it at all. Like it's awful. But I think, like, first of all, it's not an excuse to stay those. Like 7s, like definitely like that instant gratification. We struggle with like wanting to avoid our feelings and escape or whatever. That's not a subscription to stay there, a prescription to stay there. It just, I feel like it puts neon lights on the struggles I have and is a challenge for me to deal with those things so that I'm not staying there. And so I'm constantly like, I don't need that instant gratification. I don't have to avoid my feelings, even though that's the way I lived before. That's not who God created me to be. And so I feel like you have something to say.
Yeah, no, there's so much. God disciplines those he loves. And we look at discipline like it's a bad thing. And when you can say, God, I want to receive the discipline that you have, and I want to be a disciplined person, right? I believe it's it might be Hebrews 12:11. It says that no discipline is pleasant at the time. Sometimes it's painful, but it will produce a harvest of righteousness, or a peaceful harvest for those who have been trained by it. And it's making the decision that you want better for your life. 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, one audio journal. Start small. Start so small.
Yeah.
So small. God rejoices to see the work begin. Please start small. Please do not overwhelm yourself, right? But
when we are talking about like discipline, I look at it as, I feel like the word God has given me is like boundaries. These boundaries are good for me. And I'm in the middle of a sugar fast. And so Psalm 16 is like the psalm that I'm repeating it like every day. And verse 6 says, the boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Surely I have a delightful inheritance. Verse 7, I will praise the Lord who counsels me. And I know God has shared with me, like sugar, again, comfort food, it goes back to a lot of trauma in my childhood and all of that stuff. And so breaking that off of me, and for where God is taking me, I know sugar it's a coping mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't need a substitute. I don't need the deep fake, as you say. I can get the real thing. Why would I settle?
Why would you settle? Like you were saying, like the journaling and stuff, and the instant versus delayed gratification. Journaling allows you to look back and say, I have receipts. I have receipts. And I was looking back at my journals and I'm like, oh my goodness, because, like everything in the kingdom starts in seed form. And that the day that we plant the seed is not the day that we eat the fruit. And get this, the fruit, who eats their fruit? No apple tree eats their own apples. The fruit isn't even for us. Like God is going to bring the increase. He's going to bring the fruit you're going to bear the fruit, but it's for him. It's for his glory. So when you get a revelation of who you are, who you have been created to be, you are like, this is how I share it. We get to sow seeds every single day. And so I help the women in my community. We sow seeds and we have clarity and focus in the areas of our faith, our relationships, our wellness, and then our contribution, how we're contributing. Every single day is an opportunity to sow those seeds. And guess what? It's not going to sprout up the next day. You would not look at a seed that you just planted in the ground and you would not get mad at it for not having leaves the next day. You wouldn't. You would make sure that it gets the sunlight. You would make sure that you would make sure that it is in the right atmosphere to grow. Are you in the right environment? Do you have the right community around you? What are you listening to? What are you watching? What are you speaking? What is coming out of your mouth?
Yeah.
What is coming out of your mouth? Because it's going to grow. So are you going to sow seeds of faith? Are you going to go sow seeds into your relationship, into who you are mentally, emotionally, physically? Are you going to sow seeds into how you contribute and to your family, to your household, to your community, your church, your career? Or are you sowing seeds of doubt? Are you sowing seeds of laziness and of procrastination? Are you sowing seeds of I want it right now? Like, we have to be honest with ourselves. And again, going back to the journaling, you will get to see the receipts. Oh, I sowed a seed that day. I sowed a seed that day. And guess what? It wasn't perfect, but I still sowed that day. And then you'll look back and be like, look at what the Lord has done.
Yes. Yes. I don't know how many times, like, I've went back in my journals and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, look where I was and look where I am, or like things God started teaching me before I actually had the full picture. like I would write things down. And, first of all, I think a prayer journal for me, like it's not just me talking. Sometimes God speaks to me through that. Like there was one thing recently, I went back and was looking through my journals, and I recognized I completely forgot that this happened. Completely. Like I totally had missed it that this had happened. But I was journaling and I was like, it's been 3 weeks since I've journaled and talked to you. And, I'd been in my Bible. I had definitely prayed. Like I've been still doing all the things like that good Christians do or whatever. But this prayer journal is really about like, it's true intimacy for me and God. And I had wrote like, I don't understand why. And then the very next word is, actually, I do know why. It's because you asked me to do something and I did it. And my expectation of what the outcome was going to be was not met. Like it didn't go the way I thought it would. Mm-hmm. And that's when I realized, like, instead of talking to God about it and bringing him my heart of sadness and disappointment, it was easier for me to just turn away. And again, I settled for those, deep fakes. I'm sure I was on social media more. I'm sure I ate my feelings. And instead of going like, okay, again, just feeling the things instead of dismissing them and shoving them down, which one of my pet peeves is everyone's like, feelings aren't facts. I'm like, that's true. But the church has taught a lot of people to dismiss their feelings instead of recognizing their feelings so they can work through them to find the truth. Mm-hmm. Because yes, feelings are not facts, but they tell a story. And so we can recognize the story based on how we're feeling. Like, where does that come from? And so that's a pet peeve I have. Mm-hmm. But so I recognized in this, like I was disappointed. I thought it was going to go one way and it didn't. Instead of owning that feeling and talking to God about it, because he can handle it, mm-hmm. I just suppressed it and went on my day, eating my feelings, being on social media. I'm sure I scrolled. I did everything that I try not to do on a good, healthy day. And so when I went back and looked at that and I was like, oh my, like I totally, like, I don't even remember writing it. But when I saw it, then I knew exactly what it was. Mm-hmm. It was me doing a reach out, asking somebody for something that I thought like this was, I think it was actually, I had stopped coaching my contract had ended with who was my coach. And I felt like God was challenging me to ask someone to coach me. And I was going to hire that person. And I mean, this is totally off topic, but it was someone I didn't even like. Like mm-hmm. I didn't care for them. I had done all this work to get to the point where like, okay, God, I'm going to trust you, even though I don't know why you would want me to work with this person. Like I got to the point where I wasn't only okay with it, but I was excited about it because I was like, okay, something good is going to come from this. I'm going to do it. So I did it. And then she's like, I'm sorry, I'm not taking coaching clients right now. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
And again, like in the moment, it seemed so insignificant. I almost didn't catch it because I just went on my way, bearing the feelings, suppressing them. But because I was journaling, thankfully, 2 weeks later, I got back to that healthy habit of writing it down and was like, I'm sorry, God. And then I was like, I don't know. And then God quickly brought to my mind, actually, I do know why. Yeah. And so I could talk to God about that and ask for forgiveness and just give him all of that baggage that I had been carrying. And so this episode really wasn't going to be about journaling, but man, the power that comes from that. Mm-hmm. And so you say that is like a healthy dopamine thing? Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes. So journaling, getting out in nature, moving your body in a way that honors your body, right? There's moving, I like to say moving your body versus.
That's what I call it.
Yeah. You move your body in a way that.
Nurturing.
It's nurturing. It's not punishment. Dopamine, other areas or other ways that you can have that dopamine is also with like authentic connection. You know, what do you like to do? And who do you like to do it with?
I like just did a workshop called Operation Reset. In this, I have them make a list so that when I don't call it the dopamine menu, so I love that term, but like, so when you're having a bad day, instead of going to these unhealthy habits, we have a list of things that you can do to replace it. Getting outside, moving your body, journaling, turning on worship music, having a dance party. You know, dancing is one of my favorite ways to move my body, especially as someone who has struggled with depression. And, you know, sometimes it's hard. Like, it's just hard. But turning on some good music and just dancing, just free dancing, like just a free for all. I never thought that I actually liked to dance, but I'm like, actually, I got some moves. I'm just saying, I got some moves, you know? And so we have dance parties at our house with the kids, like where we're just goofing off, you know? And I'm like, it's a great way to move your body and just, I don't like nurture that. Like I looked at it more of like a way to nurture your brain in a healthy way.
Right. And it's like, this is what the world says. Do more of what makes you happy. Just do what makes you happy.
But we don't really like, okay, can we do healthy, happy? Which journaling, I think where I'm at now in my life, my definition of happy would be different than the world's. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not the same. Like, they're just like, do what, you know, be you, do you.
I want to be,
follow your heart.
Right. Be unapologetically you. I want to be unapologetically me who God created me to be.
Yes.
Because we're always going to have the tension, the flesh and the spirit. And it's like, do you even know who you are? Do you know who you are in Christ Jesus? Do you know who he sees you? One of the things that I'm challenging, like the women in my community too, is like, and this is one of my prayers, like, I want to see myself the way that God sees me. Because he doesn't see me as filthy rags. He doesn't. I'm the righteousness of God.
Yeah.
I'm perfect in his sight. And that's not walking around being full of pride or having a complex. It's walking around with a responsibility. Like, I have to steward the life that I've been blessed with. I get to steward my body. I get to steward this mind. This is the mind of Christ. I get to steward what comes out of my mouth. I get to steward my home, my children, my marriage. I get to steward my business. I get to steward the podcast. I get to steward all of these things. It's an opportunity for us to glorify God. And I know it's like, depending on how this episode is finding you today, right? It can seem like that seems like a lot, right? Seems
one
like,
baby step at a time.
Right. Let's break it down. Again, 5 to 10 minutes. Like, let's break it down. And do you know, like, the greatest thing is that if you're feeling stuck today, do you know that you have the choice, you have the opportunity to literally rewire your brain? And God is in the business of restoration. He's in the business, and restoration isn't making things, it's making things new, but better than what they were before. Joel 2:25 says, I will restore to you the years, but this is who I've been for decades. He says, I'll make it better.
Yeah.
Make it better. In Job 42:12, I got scripture today. In Job 42:12, he says, God blessed he blessed the latter half of his life better than the first. So if you're feeling like if you're feeling hopeless, if you're feeling like this is too much, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling distracted, discouraged, full of fear, guess what? God will restore it. But you have to bring it to him. You have to lay it at his feet. Matthew 11:28-30. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, right? And I will give you rest. And in the Message version, it says, are you tired? Right?
Yeah.
And I love how the Message version says it. He says, I'm going to pull it up because it's just too powerful. He says, This is Jesus talking, right? This is Jesus talking in Matthew. I'm trying to find it, so I'm giving myself a second. Are you tired? Are you burnt out? Are you tired of religion? Come with me. He says, come with me and I will give you rest. He says, I'll show you how to escape. Here it goes. Are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? This is the Message translation. Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly.
Yes, yes, yes. And that, like, I love that. And it's so true. I don't listen to or read the Message version often. Although I did. My dad and my 16-year-old both were like, I can't read the Bible. I don't understand it. So I got them for Christmas. They both got the Message version. But do you need a sign? Do you need a sign? Like, there it is. Hey friend, that's it for this episode. If you found value, I would love it if you could take a couple of seconds and leave me a quick review. While it may seem super simple, it is so beneficial and gives me the opportunity to help more women. Also, take a screenshot and share it on social media with your biggest aha today. Don't forget to tag me at Melissa Batt Official so we can connect. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, friend, keep walking it out one baby step at a time because God's got you.